What is up, everyone? Welcome to the Fun with Friends podcast. I'm your host, Allie. I hope everyone is staying safe and doing well. And, welcome to season 3 of the Fun with Friends podcast. This is episode 1 of season 3. I'm super excited to be back with the new season and even more excited to be kicking it off with yet another amazing guest. Please join me in welcoming Anna Eggleston to the show. Thanks so much for joining me and for kicking off season 3.
Thanks. I'm excited to be the season opener, and I especially liked your burr, 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 burr sound effect.
I need to just
please don't edit that out.
I'll leave it in. I should just find an actual horn that I can play, because I do that more than I should. Or get a sound effect that's people clapping for when guests come on. Not that fancy. Not even in season 3. Anna you're the founder of Above Yoga, which is kind of a mix of, well, it's not kind of a mix. It is a mix of a yoga retreat and cultural experiences and travel. And your goal is to make yoga retreats accessible to everyone, emotionally, physically, and financially. And you also focus a lot on the overall kind of travel experience and making it super easy and enjoyable for everyone, which I appreciate as someone who hates planning travel.
Well, that's what is the great part, is I love planning travel.
It makes it super easy, which just makes the whole experience so much more enjoyable.
I spoon feed it to you and then you just show up, and that's why people love it.
That is, I think, my type of travel I'm discovering. But so you and I met through a friend of the pod, Carly. She's been on a couple of episodes, I think in both season 1 and season 2. I don't know. Might have to bring her back in season 3 again. You made a post on Instagram. I think you mentioned that you were looking for a retreat photographer or something along those lines, and she sent it to me, and I was like, oh fuck yeah, I'm in. But I kind of just immediately sent you a message before I could talk myself out of it, do all that imposter syndrome. Can I actually take pictures?
You jumped on it pretty fast. Yeah, we talked, and then you and I talked on Zoom, and I feel like you booked it maybe the same day or the next day. Mm-hmm. I mean, a lot of people say they're going to do something, they say they're interested, and then radio silence. Not you. You were like, hey, I'm interested. Hey, let's talk. Okay, I booked it. All right, see you there. I was like, yes, this is my kind of person.
Yeah, no, I made an effort to do that before I could talk myself out of it. So I was just going all in. I'm going to reach out. If she's down, I'm down. I'm going to Mexico. So we ended up in Puerto Vallarta for a yoga retreat, and it was fucking magical. It was amazing.
Thank you. I think so too, but it's good to hear it from other people.
No, I had a great time. But before we get all into the yoga and the travel, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about who you are.
Well, my name is Anna Eggleston, hardest to pronounce last name, except maybe Carly's last name, which is also very hard to pronounce. So my official title is the owner and the chief Zen officer of Above Yoga, because when you own a company, you can make up your own titles. So I am the CZO of this business, but I am back in North Carolina now. So actually, Allie and I live fairly close to each other now and can meet up for Mexican when possible.
Yes.
But I was previously in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, Chapel Hill, North Carolina, then Charlotte, North Carolina for about 10 years. And then I moved to Milwaukee, Wisconsin for 4. And I'm back in North Carolina, closer to family. I just got married, which was a COVID wedding that had been postponed. Not changing my last name. I'm putting a stake in the ground.
Nice.
Patriarchy.
Yes.
Change my last name on my first marriage. That didn't work out well. So this time hoping for much better long-term situation in the marriage, and just going to keep my last name because it's confusing to change your last name so many times. But yeah, all my family's in North Carolina, but I did leave a little part of my heart in the Midwest when I moved back here. I definitely have, luckily, a lot of guests from the Midwest too, and had a wonderful career in sports marketing and some other things that we'll talk through later. The first 12 or so years of my life. And then now I am here. I never really intended to be an entrepreneur, and I definitely didn't intend to do it full time. But now that I am, I can't imagine anything else.
And you like literally just got back. So we're recording this for the listeners about a month before it's actually going to air. And Anna just got back from Morocco, which is why we're not recording in person, unfortunately, because she's quarantining, because she's hopping back on a plane to go to Croatia in a little bit. So you're just, hopping around, going to all these, holding all these yoga retreats and just being a badass.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I'm trying to make up for lost time. I postponed or canceled everything for like an 18-month period. And then the one that you came on in June to Mexico, we had a small group, and I require everybody to be vaccinated. And now I'm also requiring they take a negative test because things with COVID change on a dime. So I've just taken 2 since COVID started, and small groups and trying to take all the precautions. But yeah, I just got back from Morocco a week ago, and I keep saying it's supposed to because I caveat every trip now because you never know it's going to change. But I'm scheduled to go to Croatia in a few weeks, which I will have already come and gone back by the time this episode airs. So I've never done this many quite in a row and back to back like this, but at this point, there's all these people got postponed at least a year, sometimes more. And I think COVID is here to stay. So just got to try to do it the right way and get some people back in what they really need, which is a mental break and in the world, and trying to do it as safe as possible.
Yeah, the new travel norm with COVID. You're definitely like figuring it out with requiring the tests and the vaccines and stuff. I can see a lot of places starting to do that if they aren't already, especially related to like travel. So you're setting the bar.
Thanks. I try to. I mean, I hate that I'm setting the bar on like how to navigate a terrible infectious disease, but it's good to set the bar in some way. I was ahead of my time when requiring vaccines, I guess. So as much I did get some pushback, but most of my customers were super on board. And if you want to travel right now, you have to expect that things are not going to be like they were, and they're not going to be that way for a long time. And there is a way to do it and do it as safe as possible. And so that's my only goal, and try to keep it not political. Just like I'm very concerned about protecting people in other countries that we're going to visit, and protecting my guests and making sure it feels safe. And, right, like you can't relax if you don't feel safe. So it was so nice when we were all in Mexico to all be sitting around a table together and know every single person there was vaccinated. And we were always in open air for meals. And it's just like, we've all missed that human togetherness. Right. And so it's nice to have it again in kind of a COVID bubble environment, I guess.
No, it was really nice. The whole Mexico experience was wonderful, which we'll definitely get into here in a few. But before you do that, you kind of mentioned when you were introducing yourself, you used to do like PR and marketing for sports teams. Is that right?
Yeah, it's some variation of that for the last decade or so. If I were to summarize, I would say I did do a little PR, a lot of marketing, a lot of event management and hospitality. So I worked for a sports team. I worked for a professional athlete as his assistant for a while. I worked for a lot of major corporate clients and handled all their executives when we did big travel events related to sports. So the logistics and travel and communication and on-site hands-on aspect. Yeah, I've got that part in spades.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I love it, man. Give me a good spreadsheet I love nothing more.
I like planning, but when it comes to events and travel, not so much. Project planning, I'm good with, but
so you like a good spreadsheet too, then?
I do. Oh, yes.
I saw your Gantt chart you showed me before we started recording. So
I get lost in Excel. It's a happy place for me, oddly enough.
Hey, it's a happy place for a lot of us. If I have to put like accounting and finance information into an Excel, that I hate my life. But if I'm putting in people's flights and hotels and everything else, then I feel pretty happy. But yeah, so I worked in sports marketing and event planning and hospitality for 10 or 12 years after college. And I started Above Yoga in 2016. I kind of actually started my Instagram account before because I was posting mostly about yoga teaching, the teacher training I was taking, yoga poses, etc. And then the travel portion sort of was in utero, if you will, in 2016, and then really was birthed in 2017.
Were you like super into, like you meet folks that are just like, like the definition of a yogi, right? Like they eat, breathe, live yoga. Were you like super into yoga before you started your business, or was it something you kind of just like dabbled in and then you were like, you know what? I really enjoy this. I'm going to, make it my job.
Well, I'll ask you this because you know me well enough. Do I strike you as someone who is like super down the like yogi rabbit hole?
Absolutely not.
I mean, I love it, right? There's so many benefits to yoga. Obviously, I wouldn't have taken like 600 hours of training to teach yoga because I've taken a lot of advanced trainings. I wouldn't have dedicated so much of my time and energy to yoga if I didn't buy into it. And I didn't believe that it can really help people mentally and physically and provide a really good community. But actually, the travel portion is what I've always been passionate about. So in the board game life, when I was a kid, I always tried to get the card that said you were a travel agent. I used to like look at the hard copy brochures. My parents, luckily, like they were not going to buy us Abercrombie t-shirts, right? That was the jam at that age. They were not going to buy us Abercrombie t-shirts. We were definitely shopping at TJ Maxx. But they put that money that they saved from these stupid teenage designer clothes. And we did go on some decent trips when I was a kid. Like we did go out of the country a few times. And I think once I did that, I was like, oh my gosh, this is what I want to do as much as possible. And so even in college, I was the one that was planning the spring break for everybody and booking everyone's flights and like monitoring what they were packing if they were overpacking. So some of my friends will probably tell you I've been kind of doing this for a long time. But I actually, yeah, it makes more sense, right? I actually started going on other people's yoga retreats in probably 2014. And I went on 2 or 3 over in Europe and then one in Costa Rica. And at the time, I was going through a really bad part of my own personal life and my marriage at the time, and eventually went through a divorce. And my ex-husband didn't really want to travel. And so I had kind of fallen into this idea of going on a yoga retreat. And I didn't really even know the girl running it at first. I just sort of got an email about it and thought, well, I want to travel. My husband doesn't want to go. My friends are too busy. So I'll just go by myself. And as you now can attest to, a yoga retreat is a really cool way to travel by yourself, technically. But when you get there, you have all these built-in friends when you want them, or you can do your own thing. And so I was going on these retreats and I thought to myself, one, I really wanted to learn how to teach yoga. So the same woman who ran the yoga retreat actually ran a teacher training and I signed up and did it. And I really got more into yoga then. But the travel part was always the part stuck in the back of my head of like, this is kind of already what I do for a living. I take people places, I plan everything. I go ahead and research. I get there early, get everything set up, get it all just so. And I'm probably like overly that way compared to other people that run yoga retreats, but that's my corporate training. And it's just my nature. I can't help but like want everything to be exactly the way it should. But so that I think the travel combined with yoga part is really more the passion versus I do love teaching, but the travel and exposing people to different cultures is more of the part that I love.
So you kind of mentioned it, but like one of the things I really enjoyed was, like you said, being able to just like pop into this group of people, like-minded people. And like you said, you have like this built-in little like yoga family for a week or however long, and you can like hang out with them or not so much. And again, I'm finding that this might be my ideal type of travel. This is like the second trip I've gone on where I've gone as like part of a group, but I've gone by myself, where everything's arranged for me and I can just kind of like make sure I'm on the right plane at the right time. Yep. And so it's like super easy. Show up, someone picks you up at the airport, make sure, you get to where you need to go. And then, you can like make friends and hang out with people, or you can just kind of chill by yourself. And it's quite nice. Like, I think this might be how I travel.
It's kind of ideal. I mean, I have gone on plenty of trips just solely by myself and I love alone time, but you get to a point where like, you're thinking, well, I was totally cool by myself all day, but it'd be kind of nice to be like talking to someone else at dinner, right? I mean, I don't mind eating alone, but I do think a yoga retreat done correctly, well, what I think is correct, right? Done in a way that is conducive to it can be really nice for the perfect combo of like, you get to do your own thing. You don't have to check in with anybody, but when you want people to hang out with, they're there, and they're usually pretty freaking cool people, I think.
Yeah. And so you did PR or marketing and event planning or management, you said, for like 10 or 12 years. Was there a specific moment that you were just like, ugh, I'm leaving this, I'm starting my own shit, like this is what's happening? Or was it like a gradual just like thing that you worked up to?
It was like a snowball rolling downhill, and it just kept picking up more and more snow. And like, I could see where it was going, but I was trying to not look at it. So I ran retreats and worked my crazy marketing agency corporate job at the same time for a couple of years. And then at one point threw in grad school at the same time, not really clear what I was thinking. I used to pride myself on how busy I was and how much I could get done in a day. And I will say COVID has helped me get out of that mindset. So thank you, COVID. But yeah, so I ran the retreats and worked in my corporate job 2017, 2018, 2019. And so it could only really run one retreat a year. And then I would spend another week scouting a retreat, because I always scout and go to retreat places before I take people. And so between scouting a retreat place, running a retreat, and then, maybe one small family vacation, especially to come back to North Carolina to see family, I had no vacation left. So I was going to my boss trying to like beg, borrow, and steal vacation days. And I like lived and breathed and died by my vacation days. And I remember thinking like, this business is actually working, right? I mean, there were definitely struggles in the beginning, like absolutely crazy challenges I wouldn't have guessed. But the farther in I got, it got easier to sell spots. I learned from my mistakes. People seemed to really enjoy it. I was getting great feedback, and people would say like, well, I want to go. And I think the one I ran in 2019 was to the south of France, which is like a very easy sell. And it sells out very quickly now, but it's sold out. I remember, I will never forget, I was sitting in a meeting and one of my clients were like cell phone companies, I won't name them. I had lots of cell phone company clients over the years. And wireless providers is what I should call them. But
there you go.
I'm on the phone with my clients. We're talking about something that's going to happen that weekend, and someone else is really running the meeting. And I'm getting like pinged on my phone of all these people booking the South of France retreat. And I'm thinking, I think that was 2018 and the retreat was in 2019. But I remember being like, oh my gosh, all I want to do right now is like get out of this meeting and go look and see what happened. And I just kept being, obviously I'm trying to work my corporate job when I was sitting there, but then I would get home at night and want to focus on above yoga and the retreats. And I couldn't get to the retreat center as early as I wanted. And I had to come right home because I was burning vacation days. And then I finally, October of 2019, I got kind of a random opportunity to go on a scouting trip to Croatia, which is now manifested into this trip I'm taking.
Like right? A year later,
full circle. And I went by myself. Everyone else was an Australian travel agent. I won't even try to explain why that was the case. And I asked my boss, could I go? And I still had vacation time left. And he said, yeah. And it was like, I got on that trip, and everybody else on the trip, we were like there to basically learn about this yachting industry in Croatia. And then they were all travel agents. So they were going to sell it to their guests. And for me, it was like me trying to decide if I would want to charter my own boat. And I got on this trip, and everybody else, slept and breathed and ate travel, and they all ran their own travel businesses. And I thought, oh my gosh, this is a thing that still happens. I could be doing this. These are my people. Like, this is what I want to do.
Yeah, you're like made for that.
Yeah, like this is what I care about. This is what I want to talk about. This is what I'm passionate about. And I got home and I put in my notice at my job within like 2 weeks.
That's amazing. I didn't realize that you worked both at the same time. Like, I, honest to God, do not know how you did that.
I was like a chronic overachiever. That's how I did it. And it's not healthy, and I don't recommend it. Yeah. Like, I mean, I used to run from like a crazy work meeting at my corporate job, and I traveled all the time for my corporate job. And so I got very used to being busy, long hours, working nights and weekends on grad school or the side business, which was above yoga. And then the good thing is now, like, all that's done, and all I have to focus on is my business and obviously the rest of my life. But yeah, it was very, I will say that there's a lot of evidence I read every book you could read about when to make your side hustle your full-time job, and how do you know if you should go off on your own? And I read every article and every book and every, I just like I wanted someone to give me the answer. And I wanted the answer to be like, leave it all behind, go do your own thing. But I'd always taken this solid, clear, steady, stable path. And the idea of like, okay, now I have to pay for my own health insurance and the money is not guaranteed. And all that stuff seems scary. And I mean, it is scary.
It is, yeah.
So that's not a good reason to not do it, right? So
yeah. I'm curious. Did you find any of those books and articles that you read useful?
I did. I mean, I knew what I wanted the answer to be, right? So it was maybe still a waste of money, but there's a book by Adam Grant called The Originals that's really good. And it's not 100% relevant to what I was thinking and doing at the time, but there were certain things in there that I thought were really helpful. And then I had a woman who also runs a travel company. It's a surprise travel company. So like where you go as a surprise. Yeah. Right. And she and I had gotten in touch. She recommended a book called Company of One. And I can't think of the name of the author right now, but it's a great book. I've read it a couple of times and it's a good mindset of like, why would you work a lot more than you need to make more money when at the end of the day, you're trying to make money in theory to be happy and have more time to yourself. Like, why not just work to the point where you can make enough money to be comfortable and get your life back, And that book was very helpful when I got out of corporate America, but I couldn't get out of the corporate America mindset because I had been in it for so long. Like I would guilt myself if I wasn't at my desk, which is a joke. I was my own boss. I don't do it anymore. I'm much, much better about it. But like, if it gets done, it gets done. And you're the only person, I'm reporting to is me, and it's on me if it doesn't get done, and it always does. And there was another book I read, actually, I think in grad school that talked about that there's a lot of evidence. This could have been in the Originals book by Adam Grant, but there's a lot of evidence that if you do a side hustle, but you also have something stable, like to get the side hustle off the ground and you don't have to pay the bills with your side hustle, there is a lot of evidence that you'll be more successful in a 5-year, 10-year time span than if you try to go all in on the side hustle from day one. And, you're kind of in that fight or flight panic mode of like, I got to pay the bills with this. And so there's a lot of evidence that having something stable on the side, even though that corporate thing don't think of it as your side hustle, but it is in this case, is good and can help you launch sort of like a platform to help you launch what you really want to do. And so I think because I wasn't going to live and die by Above Yoga working the first couple of years, I was super invested emotionally, but I wasn't thinking, well, I can't pay for my rent if this retreat doesn't fill up. And so I had some wiggle room to get the kinks worked out, knowing I was going to get a pretty decent paycheck from my corporate job every 2 weeks, no matter what. And so I had a lot of runway to prove out the business model before I leaped, which turned out to be really good because I quit my job officially in November of 2019. And then the pandemic hit first in Asia, which was my next retreat in February of 2020. And then March of 2020, we know what happened. So had I had all that happened and I hadn't had my corporate job for so long, and that, like, let's say that was the first couple of months of my full-time business without the stability I had already built, I think it would be a bad situation.
Yeah. Well, and that's what you and I, the last time we met up for Mexican food to relive our days in Mexico, something you had said to me was just kind of like change the mindset, right? Like think of whatever job you have to pay the bills as, like you just said, kind of like as your side hustle. It's feeding into the business that you're running. And so instead of like looking at it kind of like, oh my God, I have to like get a normal job or a real job to like fund my life so I can keep doing what I'm passionate about, and kind of like putting a negative spin on it. You were like, no, think of it as like, this is what you're doing so that you are able to keep doing what you love and enjoy it and like not be worried so much. And I was like, oh, that is a good way to think about it. Like maybe not in such a negative way, like kind of like flip it and be like, oh yeah, it's okay if I got to get a real job to help, fund the business a little bit. So I was
it's like a factor of stability. And then you have more breathing room to be creative in whatever is really fueling you.
Yeah, you're not like stressed and worried about food.
Food and rent and health insurance and the dentist bill and all those things.
Life.
Yeah, because life's expensive.
Yes.
This episode of the Wandering Creatives podcast is sponsored by Coots Creations, branding and marketing for creatives by creatives. Coots Creations serves small businesses, entrepreneurs, and creatives throughout the country with branding, marketing, and social media management. We accomplish this by creating unique graphics, a cohesive visual brand, and content that tells your brand's story and builds trust with your customers. Visit cootscreations.com and book your free consultation today.
Obviously, one of the big challenges that you've had since starting and kind of like going full into above yoga has obviously been COVID. Like that was a pretty big hit, shutting everything down, especially when it comes to traveling. What are some of the other challenges that you've kind of encountered in starting your own business and then also having it be like a yoga travel focused business?
Yeah, one thing that happened really early on that was a good lesson is people canceled like the first retreat, right? One, it was hard to get people to book. And then once people booked, I thought, okay, good, great. I'm like almost close to selling out. And we were going to Tulum, Mexico on that one. I heart Mexico, if you can't tell. Te amo, Mexico. But people canceled and they, when people cancel, they want their money back, and you need to have a policy that's clear. And now people cancel all the time. And sometimes it's COVID related, sometimes it's life circumstance related. But I mean, tons of people cancel. And it seems stupid, but it didn't really occur to me at the time when I did the first one. Like I thought, oh, people paid a non-refundable deposit. They're going to, they've booked, they're coming, they've put it on their calendar. I, for one, once a vacation goes on the calendar, it never comes back off.
It's real.
But right, life happens. And I think as I was telling you, someone literally just canceled right before we jumped on this call for a trip in a few months. It's not personal. It doesn't say anything about your business. It's just, that's life. And knowing that people are going to cancel, I always have a wait list going because a lot of my trips are sold out. Mm-hmm. And I almost always pull a ton of people off the wait list and sometimes super last minute. And so just knowing like it all kind of comes out in the wash in the end, and having policies, and I try to put human mindset first. And so I have policies, but obviously I try to be a good person first and foremost. But at the same time, I'm running a business, and I've gotten much better in the last 6 months or so about acknowledging that, yes, I want to be nice and kind and helpful to everybody, but also it's a business. And if I give every single person all of their money back if they cancel last minute, I'm not going to have a business for very long. And so I don't take it personal if they cancel. And I now realize people probably don't take it personally if I say this is the policy and I have to stick to it. So you have to balance when you run a business or anywhere. What are your values and your desire to be liked versus what the business needs? And so another example is I decided back in April to require vaccines for all retreats. And this was way before any sort of employers required them. And I didn't see any other really tourism providers except maybe cruise ships requiring them. And I got some pretty nasty pushback on social media. And the irony is that the worst pushback I got were from random people who didn't even follow me, had never been on a trip, didn't know me at all. And so that's fine, right? I did get some pushback from people I knew, but not that much. And then I had several guests that were signed up for retreats prior to COVID ever happening and kept getting postponed. And now here I am instituting a new policy. And so for those people, I absolutely said, I will refund all of your money. Obviously, the situation has changed if you don't wish to get vaccinated. The people who were signed up, who were unvaccinated and said they were not planning on doing it, by and large, were super nice about it, super understanding, very kind, very willing to say they weren't planning on getting it, and very understanding of why I felt the policy was necessary. It was the trolls online who really dug into me. But then I sat and thought about it, and it's like, these people are not my customers, right? The most of the people in the comment wars online are not my customers. They don't even care about my business. They don't know me at all. And so I don't really care if they don't like me because I think I'm doing the right thing. And in retrospect, these trips where people were ripping me new ones about requiring vaccines, now all those countries require vaccines to go anyway. So the people couldn't have come to begin with. And now a lot of places are requiring vaccines and test, as I am. And so it's kind of a roller coaster, especially with COVID, of postponements and cancellations and policies changing. And I've learned a good lesson about the roller coaster has to slow down at some point, or it has to eventually come to a stop, maybe. And so I'm getting a little bit better riding the roller coaster. And now that I have a couple under my belt that have gone really well, it's like I've done everything I can do. And at some point I have to put a pin in it and say, this is this is the best possible situation for what is going on, and be happy with that, because there's nothing else I can do.
I feel like, you've really made it when random internet trolls can find you and start talking shit in your comments. Like, I feel like that's like a badge of honor.
Perhaps I should have not put any hashtags on that post. Retrospect, don't put like hashtag vaccinated travel on your post. I did get great engagement on that post. But I will say, like, the flip side is people privately messaged me a lot right after that and said, I would travel with you now solely because you require vaccines, right? So, it's everybody has an opinion, right?
You win some, you lose some.
Yes. Yep, exactly.
You can't make everybody happy.
No, you can't. And I think that is the nugget to take away is when you run a business, you cannot make everyone happy, and you have to get okay with that.
And boundaries. Like you were saying, like knowing when to refund all or just part, and being okay with like drawing that boundary and being like, like, I want to be friendly, but I can't give you all of your money back, or I'm going to go under as a business. Right. Like knowing those lines and just drawing them, sticking to your guns.
Yes. Boundaries are something I'm working on for sure, but I'm getting better. Same. And I also think there's a lot of resiliency in, like, if as a travel business or any kind of business, you can make it through COVID, then it feels a little bit like you've put on this suit of armor of, okay, bring it on 2022, 2023, whenever, I really think it can't be worse than the last year and a half. So
don't jinx us.
Knock on wood.
Knock on wood.
But
oh my gosh. When it comes to like picking where you're going to go, you go and you do, like you kind of mentioned, you go and you scout the place, and you're like, what is that process like for you? Like you were talking about the one with Croatia, you went with like a group of other travel agents and stuff like that, but do you typically go by yourself, or like, what's your process, and how do you find like the perfect yoga retreat location?
I wish there was a perfect science, so I could input it in the algorithm and just pop out. There's not. I can give you some examples. The first one I ever ran,
pool.
Yes, rooftop pool, key. The first one I ever ran, I was already going to be in Tulum, Mexico for a friend's destination wedding. And I was at that point thinking I want to start running retreats. And so I found the retreat center, messaged the owner, emailed them, said, can I come meet with you? And so that was kind of the first time I ever scouted something. And it was like, 30 minutes out of my several days in Mexico for this wedding. But sometimes, like, I've gone to Ireland and I took my mom with me on the scouting trip, and she came with me, and I said, you can come along, but I'm working and I want to go look at these retreat centers and do the activities and go on the hikes and everything else. And so, I spent a week in Ireland to scout, and then a year later took people back to the place. And then I did something similar for Morocco. I went to Morocco over New Year's Eve and I took a girlfriend of mine, and we were there for, 8 or 10 days. And I had picked out places to scout in a couple different towns. And then we had gotten through like the first 6 days, and I hadn't seen anything that really felt right. And it's not like I have a checklist. I mean, I have a checklist in a way, but it's a lot of it is just showing up and seeing really where it is compared to other things, how it feels, the setup of it, and how responsive are the people that work there? Do they seem like they're going to be good to work with? And so I looked at a ton of places. I wasn't finding anything I liked. I thought, oh my gosh, we came all the way over here and I'm not going to find anything. And then the last day, it was like very surreptitious, like the place across from where we weren't supposed to stay. I went and looked there, and then I found another place on the way to the airport, and kind of like crammed a couple other visits in the last day that were very by chance. And both those places are places I'm now going back to. So it depends. I mean, usually I have specifically planned a trip to go to these places and get a sense of what's out there. But a lot of times I'm finding even better things than what I found online once I get there and get in the country and start talking to people. But it's a lot of just putting yourself out there, right? And now when I email a place that runs retreats, or even could be held as a retreat center, they're not always set up as retreat centers. Like where we went in Mexico was a place you could just rent privately, and I kind of turned it into a retreat center. But now when I email people and they go to my website, they're like, okay, this is a legitimate business. But at the end of the day, if you have money, people are willing to take it, right? So they don't care if it's a legitimate business or not. If you say, I want to rent this place and here's my money, they don't really care what you do with it. So
all about the vibe.
It is. I mean, that sounds very like woo-woo and eye roll inducing, but I can walk into a place and be like, yes. And it's not something I can explain to other people, or I can walk into a place and be like, okay, I see why other people would book this place, but it's not right for me.
Yeah, no, I can totally see that. Totally understand. Especially the place in Morocco just looked magical. It looked so beautiful. Yeah.
Everything in Morocco is magical, so that helps.
So jealous.
The lantern, the rugs, the pillows, the tea, it's all very magical.
The camels. I want to jump to Mexico because that's like a shared experience that we can talk about. So I got to go to Puerto Vallarta with you and Above Yoga on one of your retreats. And it was honestly one of the most amazing experiences that I've had. Like it was.
Don't make me cry.
It was amazing. And this was only my second time traveling like abroad, like to another country, which is funny because I was like, oh, it's just Mexico. You know, I don't know. Like, I don't think a lot of people think of like Mexico as like traveling abroad, but to me, I'm going to Mexico. And it was nice to be with the group, but not with the group. I also like didn't know what to expect because I was like, oh, yoga retreat. Like, what's, are we going to be doing yoga the entire time? Like, are people going to be kind of like stuck up in like bougie
doing fancy ass yoga poses for Instagram?
Yeah. I was like, what am I walking into here? I didn't have like a great idea of what it was, but your style of yoga retreat is like just super chill. Like you can do one class or you can do all the classes or none of them. And there was like no judgment from anyone. Like everyone was just like, no one cared. They're just like, whatever, we're all here to like hang out, drink margaritas, maybe do some yoga, maybe not.
Or if you're Brandon, bring your Dos Equis to class, whatever.
A little drunk yoga, like it's all good. It was just super chill. The group of people, like there was such a good group in Puerto Vallarta, which I feel like I feel like the people that kind of sign on for your classes or for your retreats are like generally nice, chill people. So I feel like you probably always have like a really good crowd of just, I don't know, a fantastic group of folks that can all chill together.
The thing is, people who willingly go on a trip with strangers are usually very accepting. And I feel like I make it super clear in my Instagram bio and on my webpage, like we accept all people. If you don't accept all people, this is not the right thing for you. People come with an open mind usually, and they're open to making new friends. And I've never, knock on wood, ever had any sort of interpersonal drama with anyone on the trip ever. I mean, I've never. Nice. It just doesn't happen. And maybe I shouldn't say that, but it's never happened before. And people always get along. They always stay in touch, which I love. I don't know. I guess if it's not the right thing for you, you wouldn't sign up for it. Or like you might get the memo pretty quick that it's pretty laid back. And there are absolutely yoga retreats where you go into the mountains and you don't talk to anybody and you do yoga and meditation and you sit for hours and hours and hours a day. And there's a great benefit to that. That's just not what I do, right? Mm-hmm. I do a yoga retreat for people who think they don't like yoga retreats. And it's just as much about the culture and the food and the hanging out with other people as it is about the yoga, really more so about everything but the yoga. But it's a really nice time to come together in the morning if you want to come to class. But as you know, like plenty of people didn't come to class and they met us at breakfast or slept in or whatever the case was. And I think it makes yoga very accessible for people because I have people on retreats who are in their 50s, 60s, and 70s sometimes. I have people in their 20s. I mean, of course, average age is probably 30, 40s, but there are all body types, all ages, all, everything. And so we're not doing Instagram worthy yoga poses, right? Like we're not doing arm balances. And I mean, if people want to do it, sure, I'll offer it at the end. But I mean, most of it is more, let's be present and mindful and do a slow flow or a yin or class or restorative. I mean, we do flows in the morning if people want to be there, but it's really, you could come and do none of the yoga and have an incredible trip planned for you. And I mean, you came to a couple classes. Lori, one of the girls on the trip, I think she came to 1 out of like 8 or 9 classes offered. And then some people came to most of them. And it's funny because I always go, even if I'm not teaching, because I always take other yoga teachers too. But in Morocco one morning, I was like, you know what? Like I tell everyone else to do what they feel like and not feel any pressure. And so I skipped a class in Morocco and I was like kind of proud of myself because I got my tea and I went and sat on my little balcony and kicked my feet up and watched the world go by and didn't go to class. And I patted myself on the back for that.
Nice. Yeah, that was the other thing I really liked about what you do is, so you have the yoga classes that you can do or not do, but then you also arrange, like, we did a tour of the botanical garden, which was beautiful.
And how
So
good
great.
is their food? Their food is insane.
And also
That is like just as much a culinary thing as it is about the flowers and the gardens and the animals.
Yes. And like sitting up in the open like balcony with like hummingbirds around you while you eat this amazing food. You took us to No Way Jose's? Is that what it was called?
Oh yes, my favorite restaurant. Yes. No Way Jose. Man, that was like a long dinner.
Oh my Lord.
Like elaborate guacamole and the elaborate dessert and the
fire.
Yes,
I mean, it was
that
amazing.
was a dining experience.
It was. And you personally gave us like a walking tour of where we were staying, which was really nice because I'm a visual person. And so I think we did that the first day, second day.
We did that the morning of the first day after yoga and breakfast. We did like a kind of orientation because Puerto Vallarta is very walkable and where we stay is right in the heart of that romantic zone area. And so the beach is like a very good landmark and it's not everywhere we go. Sometimes we're a little farther out in the countryside, but in the case of Puerto Vallarta or like the place I take people in Cambodia and stuff, it's nice to get like an orientation and then you have all week to go back and check out restaurants or, at least kind of where you are, how to get back to where you're staying.
Yeah, that was big for me because I was like, okay, this landmark and, it really helped me like figure out where the hell I was. And so I did, like you were saying, I did exactly that. Like I would go out by myself and be like, all right, I know if I walk down here, there's a whale to my right. That means the restaurant that's good is to my left. And
yes, right.
And so it was just super nice to have kind of like a personalized tour, right? Like it wasn't just a random tour guide walking us through.
It was me.
Yeah.
And I think we went by the really famous church on that day too, if people want to come back to that. And shameless plug, now we have the mobile app. So I had all the restaurant recommendations on a map of the area. So that's happening for every retreat. I have yet to find another retreat operator who offers up a mobile app. So,
it was
feather right in my cap. My husband programs the whole thing, so I can't but so much credit for it. But
I used it while I was there because I was pulling up the maps and stuff and was like, okay, this is where I'm going. So it was useful.
It's nice to have like some parameters of what to do, where to go, where you are. And then you still have the freedom. You're an adult, right? You have the freedom. It's not a field trip. You have the freedom to go do whatever you want, but at least you're not like on TripAdvisor trying to find everything and wasting your vacation time.
This is a second retreat that you've done in Mexico, right?
Yeah, Tulum first time and then Puerto Vallarta. Yeah.
What is it about Mexico that just kind of like keeps you coming back? Besides the food.
I love Mexico. I'm not taking a retreat there. This is not a plug for a retreat, but I'm obsessed with Mexico City. If it's not on your list, it should be. In fact, the Puerto Vallarta thing came about in a really roundabout way. I was scheduled to go stay at a friend's apartment because she was going somewhere else. She lives in Mexico City. I was scheduled to go like kind of sublease her apartment for like 2 weeks in January. And then things with COVID were still really bad. So I didn't go, but I ended up going to Puerto Vallarta instead and went a couple days early for something else. And so the reason I found that villa that we ended up having the retreat at is because I was supposed to go to Mexico City and had to cancel it. But I went to Mexico City years ago and loved it. And I had been to Cancun and Playa del Carmen and Tulum and all that stuff tons of time. And I like it. It's great. But Puerto Vallarta has much more of like a little small town feel. I mean, small town is relative, like but
beach,
it's got like a walking downtown with squares and shops and like people actually live in Puerto Vallarta, right? And it's still absolutely a tourist town, but it's got a lot more vibe and personality. And so I'm trying to get to Cabo soon, but I really want to go to Oaxaca, and Mexico is such a absolute gem of a place for culture and architecture and history and the food. If you were like, okay, there's one country that you have to go to the rest of your life and you can't go to any other country, I would pick Mexico in a heartbeat because there's hundreds of cities and there's tons of states of Mexico I've never seen. And yeah, I mean, a place that is the home of tequila and like all good food.
Yes.
And super nice people. What more could you ask for?
Do you know what goes great with listening to podcasts? If you said a warm drink, you're absolutely right. Just imagine you're sitting back, you're listening to your favorite podcast, all while holding a nice, cute-ass mug in your hand with your favorite hot beverage in it. If you're wondering, where can I get a mug like that? Well, you're in luck. You can swing by the Coots Creations Cute Coffee and Tea Mugs Etsy shop. They've got everything from enamel coffee cups to travel mugs, all featuring adorable original artwork. Head over to etsy.com/shop/Coots Creations and use promo code WANDER for 10% off any mug.
Okay, so this next section is going to be the travel question speed round. Again, need some type of sound effect here. Speed round. So I'm going to ask you a question related to travel stuff and, one sentence responses fast.
Ooh, okay, I'll try.
Yeah, I suck at this too. So I have to stop myself from responding to your answers.
Okay, I'm ready. Am I allowed to explain afterwards? Okay.
Yes. Okay. Travel question speed round. Question number 1. What has been your favorite retreat so far?
Cambodia.
Why?
Oh, so I get a follow-up answer now?
Yeah.
It's like asking me what my favorite child is. I can't have a favorite child, but as far as like people getting super far out of their comfort zone and having kind of a life-changing experience, it's hard to beat Cambodia. Morocco's pretty amazing. I mean, I love all of them. I can't help it. But if I had to pick one, I would say Cambodia is the most life-changing.
Favorite place that you've ever traveled to, either with a retreat or just for fun?
Oh, these questions are hard. Vietnam is pretty incredible.
Ooh. Most adventurous or crazy thing that you've ever done while traveling?
Well, I can think of a lot. Like cliff jumping in Greece and some other things that maybe sound more like that, but you said one-word answers. It's not a one-word answer. Randomly following these young girls in India, and they invited us into their home and they gave us henna, and it was like seemed kind of sketchy at first because they're definitely not like, they're just like, they were teenagers, but then their whole family came over and they fed us tea. And it was just like the most interesting, lovely cultural experience. And when I was following these random girls down a dark alley and up a staircase, I was thinking this is not a good choice. And then it ended up being like the most fun memory of the whole trip. So
yeah, that does sound a little crazy, but also amazing. So maybe be careful when going places with strangers, but
you have to
turn out to be awesome.
You have to get a good gut read of people, right? So
there you go. Next question. What is the weirdest thing you've ever eaten while traveling?
Ooh, well, I don't eat meat. So I feel like my answer to this question is going to be pretty boring. I did kind of break my no land animals eating rule. I had escargot in France, in Paris, near the Moulin Rouge, actually. And so there's snails. Yeah, so very fancy. So they're snails, but they're cooked in like copious amounts of butter and garlic and herbs. And they were damn delicious.
Have you ever had like sometimes they do like cooked bugs and stuff?
Ooh, no. And in Cambodia, they have like little scorpions that are like fried. No. I mean, I would have in my meat eating days, but the snails were as close to like meat as I could get. But they were delicious. And I will say that like when I go someplace in Asia, like India or Cambodia or Vietnam or something, if they serve something kind of like weird and different for breakfast, a lot of places they'll serve like noodle bowls with veggies and tofu and stuff for breakfast or fried rice. And I'm all in on that. Like, I don't care what meal it's supposed to be not at home. I'm all in on like, sure, feed me nachos for breakfast in Mexico or a noodle bowl for breakfast in Cambodia. It's not like a crazy thing to eat. It's just like, yeah, I don't go wrong with noodle toast. Yes.
Last question of the speed round. What do you love most about what you do?
I love meeting people, and I love watching the people that come on retreats meet each other and then carry that relationship through for years. I like being a connector.
That's a good answer. All right. So that was the end of the speed round. You killed it. No wrong answers. Well done.
Thank you. I was going to say, I didn't know I was going to be graded on the speed round.
Yep. 10 for 10. What are some of the other things that you have coming up?
By the time this airs, I will have gone to Croatia and back. So I'm pretty excited about that.
We'll check in with you when you get back.
Yes. And then I'm doing a small retreat to the Dominican Republic the first week of December. private villa, private chef, etc. There's a couple spots on that. That will be very low key, which I'm excited about. And then taking another group back to Morocco the end of December, so over New Year's Eve, to Marrakesh, one of the bigger cities in Morocco. Mm-hmm. And then 2022, I'm taking people back to Puerto Vallarta, where you went, to that Mexican villa. I'm doing that at the end of January. And then I'm trying my very best to take a big break, because I will have done about 6 kind of back to back. So I'm trying to take a break in the spring. We'll see if that holds. And then, for my own mental well-being.
Yep.
And then I'm doing back-to-back retreats in the south of France in June. And then I am going on someone else's retreat again for the first time in a long time. So I'm going on a retreat to Kenya for like a safari and yoga retreat. Yes. Ooh, nice. The listeners can't see that Allie's jaw has dropped on the video, but it has. So yeah, I'm excited to like go on a retreat that I don't have to be in charge of. And then I'm going back to Ireland in the fall. So yoga and hiking on the cliffs of Moher on the west coast of Ireland, which I did that in 2018. And that's a super beautiful, soulful, magical place. And then Cambodia has been postponed twice. So Cambodia, hopefully it's going to run next November. And then I'm considering tacking on like a optional add-on for the Cambodia guests to do a couple of extra nights in Vietnam, because I've been to Vietnam twice. Nice. And I love it. And they're right next door to each other. But yeah, I'm sure I'll go back to Morocco again in 2022 at some point. And when people request things or they put themselves on the wait list, then I know it's popular and I can do more. But eventually I might, want to start a family and have kids. So I am like right now trying to think about like, when could I possibly have a child and still run this business? So over time, I'm hoping to bring on some other people to help run it on site, and I can just run it from behind the scenes. And so I'm sure it will change and shift over the next couple of years, but hopefully you'll have me back before any of that stuff happens.
I mean, well, we've got your plan through 2022. So now I know when I can hit you up for another interview.
Yes, exactly.
But also south of France. Yes. Ireland. Yes. Put me on the list. I'll come take photos for you.
Yes, that would be great.
And then where can folks find you? Where can folks follow along, find more information about the retreats?
So the website is just aboveyoga.com, nice and easy. And you can put yourself on the wait list for any of the retreats that are sold out, or just sign up if there's spots. And then on social media channels, for Instagram is where I do most things. And it's above_yoga_retreats.
So before we wrap up, I always like to ask my guests a final question. What is one thing that you've always wanted to do that you haven't done yet? And what do you think has been holding you back?
That's a good one. A couple of things, and I'm working on both actually. I have always wanted to be fluent in another language, and Spanish is where I had the most, I already have a foundation in Spanish. So I hired a Spanish tutor almost a year ago. And I've been working with him most weeks when I'm not gone, twice a week on Zoom. And it's helped a lot, but I just need to go somewhere and stay for a lot longer than I do to get better. So I would just absolutely kill to be fluent in Spanish, but I'm a long way from that. And I've always wanted to go on a safari. And so this Kenya trip, I'm super excited about. And I've also always really wanted to hike Mount Kilimanjaro, despite the fact that I have asthma. That's somewhat exercise induced and altitude induced. But so now I'm trying to massage the idea of tacking on going to Tanzania and hiking Mount Kilimanjaro at some point before, before I have this weird feeling like once I have kids, it's going to be hard to do some of this stuff. But you know what? People travel for decades after they have kids. So
you just got to strap that little nugget onto, your back or your front or whatever, and just
be the Sherpa, take the nugget up Mount Kilimanjaro. Yeah.
People,
you know what?
People do it all the time.
People do it. People have done crazier things. So I like to push myself physically, not often, but when I do, I like to push myself. I've done charity hikes that were like 32 miles in a day, and which is strange because like normally I don't walk more than a mile or two, but I like to push myself physically occasionally. So that would be a big push.
That might be the way to do it. I love all of your bucket list items. Mount Kilimanjaro, if you do that, let me know. Like if you start training for it or whatever.
If I can convince someone to go with me, I will do it. I will sign up tomorrow. So you just noodle on that, Allie.
We'll talk later.
Because I've
got a thing about climbing mountains and I'm into it. So
Well, and it's a very good analogy for life, right? Climbing hard mountains.
yeah, I'm gonna talk to you later about this Mount Kilimanjaro.
All right, let's do it. Then we could podcast from the top of the world.
Oh shit.
What are we waiting on?
Love it. Oh my God. Just count me in right now. I mean, that's
all right, done.
I got to do what I did with the Mexico trip, right? I just be like, yeah, I'm in, let's go. I also have asthma, somewhat sports induced.
There we go. We'll split the inhaler. It'll be fine.
And really bad joints.
Ditto. But you know what? We'll make it work.
We'll make it happen. Oh my God. It has been so fun catching up with you and having you on the podcast. I cannot thank you enough for being on today's episode and also picking me as your yoga retreat photographer.
Thank you.
It was wonderful.
I'll be back anytime you're ready.
And it was a fantastic experience. It really was like an eye-opening, just like personal, emotional, physical, everything kind of experience. And it was
a journey.
It was truly a journey, but like so fantastic. So I cannot thank you enough.
Well, now I'm gonna cry.
Good. That's what I'm aiming for now. But thank you so much for being on the episode. And listeners, you can find more information about Above Yoga and upcoming retreats on Anna's website, aboveyoga.com. And you can follow on Instagram at above_yoga_retreats. And I want to thank the listeners for tuning into this week's episode. If you have questions, comments, thoughts, whatever, you can text or call us on our hotline, 252-419-6004, and we will include them on a future episode of the podcast. You can also follow us on Instagram at Fun with Friends Podcast and check out our website, goodscreations.com. Awesome. Also, be sure to like, rate, and review the Fun with Friends podcast wherever you listen to it. With that, get out there, try something new, and have some fucking fun. Bye.
Bye.